All right, guys, we are ready to talk to Dr. Tony Hampton. Dr. Tony is a metabolic specialist. Is that what you go? Is that how you call yourself?
That's right. Metabolic health doc. That's my priority. And it's all
Okay.
about root cause, why we get sick, and we're going to fix things.
Ooh, I love it. Why we get sick. Awesome. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different things. What your philosophy is on metabolic health, how you approach fitness and exercise in your clinic, and we're going to just kind of dig into some of the things that a carnivore, or you're carnivore, right? You follow carnivore yourself?
I may slip into ketovore once or twice if my
Yeah.
wife look at me funny, but for the most part, carnivore.
So you're one of these awesome docs who eats a lot of animal meat.
Yes.
There are more of them. The population of animal-based docs are growing, and I love it.
Yeah. Most of them are in the closet, by the way. Most of them are in the closet. That's what I'm
really still in the closet, huh?
Yeah, they won't because it's weird to say, but I'm meeting people in my health system that are doing it, and they just have never said it publicly.
Oh, hey, I would rather that than not at all, right? I mean,
That's
it's
right.
better than nothing. So that's awesome. Good. That's good to hear. That's positive news. So how did you get started? You've been a doctor for how long?
Man, believe it or not, 29 years. I'm 54.
Good grief.
20. I know it's insane. So it's forever.
And how long has this metabolic focus and animal-based kind of process been? Or did they happen at the same time, or did one happen before the other?
I started as a vegetarian maybe 10 years ago. I'd slip into vegan every once in a while. Still had some trouble. Always was hungry. Still had irritable stomach issues. So I knew it. But what really made me look at low carb in particular was just, doing research for my book. I wrote a book, Fix Your Diet, Fix Your Diabetes. And I was like, you know what? Let me see what the science is saying. And then you see studies, A to Z study and others, and they're showing that Atkins is, giving better outcomes. And I'm like, how the heck is Atkins giving better outcomes than this Ornish diet, which was more, I just couldn't, my brain still struggles to process that. Yeah. So while doing the research and to honor that, I said, well, maybe I'll try it myself. And I was seeing that my stomach was happier. And then I said, well, let me try it on some patients. And it was like a miracle. And it's kind of logical now. Okay, the diabetic doesn't eat carbs or as many carbs. The diabetes gets better because carbs is what they can't do. Duh. So how that's that mainstream, I don't know. So, and then so over the last 10 years is when I've been in the low carb space, pretty much low carb, most of it. And then maybe, 4 years ago, keto. And I'd say in the last year, it's been, ketovore transitioning more to carnivore. I feel better for sure when I eat animals. That's just who I am. My stomach is very happy. I don't remember what it was like to have stomach problems. It's like, a thing of the past unless I decide to cheat. And if I cheat, or if I try to honor that relative that makes their favorite dish, or, you can handle this. It's just one slice.
Right.
My body doesn't particularly like it. So that's kind of how I got into this space. And when I started seeing patients heal, it was a miracle.
How was your transit? Because this is also something that I hear a lot.
Yeah.
The transition from vegetarian, vegan to animal-based, number one. And then to follow that up with, what do you recommend for people who, even if they haven't been vegetarian, maybe they've been paleo, Whole30, but when they try to eat meat, they can't. They feel like it makes them sick, whatever else. Because I hear people all the time, and I have people that have been bugging me or asking me questions or trying to force down the idea that blood type makes a difference and all these other different things that are out there about who should or shouldn't eat meat.
Yeah.
So those two kind of things.
The transition for me, it was not hard. It's kind of, I think psychologically it was interesting. What made it interesting or less interesting is that I was eating a lot of those fake burgers, right?
Oh,
so my brain was used to eating a burger, but even though it wasn't really a burger. So I think that part would be hard for some people, but for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. When it comes to like when people struggle, and people struggle for various reasons, right? I think the first thing I tell all patients is, your body will lose sodium, potassium, magnesium potentially. So we're going to supplement those, not as a routine. I just need to make them aware. So if they get like carb withdrawal, you can call it keto flu or whatever, they
Mhm.
know that that's normal and they need to understand that that's part of it. I know we have dietary guidelines for carb restriction with the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners and for Low Carb USA. So I'll be thoughtful about that. So if a person has gout, kidney stones that were uric acid, we may have to ease into that or add a medicine for that purpose. We're careful about the blood pressure dropping. How
Right.
nice to have a diet that will drop your blood pressure so much is dangerous. It's unsafe. So you have to have
Right.
a supervision from a doctor, and it should be on CNN breaking news. Some people need to take some supplements with some acid. Some people need to help. I think most people need to slow down and just give their body time to start making more acid. But there are times when people may find they're a little bit more aggressive and they want to take some acid supplements, and I think that's fine. I know for me personally, I had to make sure I had enough fat in my diet, and so when I was adjusting to this dietary pattern, I had to make sure I had a sufficient amount of fat. But for
Right.
most patients, it's all about easing into it. It's just like low carb versus carnivore. Some people need to start at 100 carbs, and then they go to 50, then they go to 30, and then they go to 10 where they're at ketovore, and then they go further.
Right.
So I think for a lot of people, you can't go to your car, which has two types of engines, electric and gas, and expect when you first turn on the electric for the first time. Now in reality it'll go smoothly, but in theory it takes time for your body. We're not cars, so
Make
we
that
can't
switch.
make
Right.
that switch that quickly. And I think if people ease into it, they'll do much better.
Okay. All right. Cool. So you got started going from plant-based mostly, getting into animal-based. What's your driving force, or like, what is the metabolic piece to what you do, and where does that come from, based on the
Well,
things you were doing before?
I mean, I have a MBA. My wife says I'm like this chronic student, right? I saw you had like a lot of certifications, right?
Yeah,
So you have the same problem I have.
I try
But
to get at least one a year, if not
yeah,
more.
that's crazy. My wife, she's threatened me, so I'm gonna have to slow down. But one of the things I try to do is get return on investment. So if a person focuses on metabolic health, they will in theory reduce the risk for 70 to 80% of all the things that harm us. So when I see patients, the first thing I say to them is, what type of medical conditions have harmed your family? They're always gonna mention either hypertension, diabetes, heart attack, stroke, dementia,
Yep.
cancer, or whatever. And so when they mention those things, I was like, if I could give you a way to reduce your risk for all of these things by doing, just a few simple things, would you be willing to do that? And invariably they say yes. So for
Hmm.
me, once I understood the connection between poor metabolic health and all of these chronic conditions where we're spending, I just looked up a medicine for a patient who was insistent we have to get this medicine covered, and I looked it up. It was a diabetes pill, and it was like $800 a month. And then I looked up, I said, well, let's see what the return on investment was for that. And I looked it up, and it said on average, you're gonna get a 0.5 to a 0.8 reduction in your A1C for that much money a month, right? I
Point
said, well,
five to point eight. Okay.
I mean,
Wow.
and for most drugs, and unless you're in the Ozempic space, Trulicity space, most drugs it's like a point or less improvement, and you're spending hundreds of dollars a month when you just needed to put down the fruit, or put down the other starchy items. So I like
Yeah.
the rice. So I just think that for me, I make a compelling argument that if you follow these simple dietary patterns, it's very likely your life's going to be longer. You're going to feel better. You're not going to get these chronic medical conditions, and you're likely to get off your medicine. So for me, metabolic health should be what all doctors focus on. But instead,
Right.
we focus on, let me give you a pill for your cholesterol. Let me give you something for your blood pressure. And you can literally fix all of those things with one simple lifestyle change, whether it's, low carb, fasting, or movement. You can
Right.
fix all of that. So there's no
Yeah.
need to take all of those medicines.
That's crazy. The idea that focusing on one area can fix so many different things.
Man, it's a
You know,
miracle.
it's crazy to think that the food that you eat and how you move your body actually matters.
It matters, and
Like
it
what?
matters at a clip that is hard to
How did we
understand.
how
Yeah.
did we lose that? How did we lose that knowledge? Like,
Well,
I don't
there
even understand.
because the people who are in our ears are, have a different agenda. I think
Mm,
most people in healthcare went into healthcare care to help people heal. But if I now we don't allow pharma in our clinics anymore where they come in and they're really salespeople, nice
sure.
people, but they're salespeople. We don't because they influence our decision making. So if they come to us with some studies, most of which were sponsored by the same company that you're
Right.
trying to convince you to take the drug, then it's gonna influence your decision making. So what we don't talk about is nutrition studies. If it's true that a diabetic or a pre-diabetic can reduce their risk for getting diabetes by 58% if they're less than 65 and 71% if they're older than 65 by
Wow.
lifestyle changes. But instead, what we do is give metformin, which does reduce the risk, but it's only by 30, like 31.
But isn't metformin like really bad for you too?
Well, metformin has issues. Now, some people use it for longevity. So it has
In
it,
micro doses though, right? It's
yeah,
not like
right.
they're taking full
They have
doses.
that. Some, but
Yeah.
you're supposed to take, B12 should be taken because it's going to impact that. It doesn't really harm the kidneys as much as if your kidneys are not functioning well, metformin can, build up and cause metabolic acidosis, right?
Mhm.
So I think that compared to other drugs, it's not that bad because it does reduce insulin resistance. It doesn't increase insulin, but all the medicines have a list of side effects that are so long. I'm okay with that as bridge therapy, but but if you have a slightly elevated A1C, even if it's 7, you
Yeah.
can make the lifestyle changes and have it down to 5 in 3 months. So
Right.
there's no need to take medicine. Now, if your A1C is, 13, you may have to use medicine as bridge therapy to kind of stabilize you and put you in a safer place. But
Yeah.
other than that, most people with type 2 diabetes can reverse it. So there's no
I've
need to,
actually
you know
yeah. Yeah, I've actually seen people in the above 10 range drop it to under 6 in 3 months.
Yeah, I
It's
I know
crazy.
that's
It's
true, and
absolutely
it's
crazy.
very possible. It happens all the time. If you don't consume the poison, which is all the things that turn into sugar, whether it's starch or grains or sugar itself, then you don't need the antidote. It's just
Yeah.
that simple. And I don't know why we live in a world where it's not obvious that we're only focused on the antidote. Once we fix that, not only will patients have to take less medicine, but the clinicians will feel like healers again.
Mhm.
And that's what they went into this in the first place. They didn't want to prescribe medicines. They wanted to de-prescribe medicines. And so, but you can't do that without doing lifestyle. And you certainly can't have a type 1 diabetic have a 5 A1C unless they're doing they have to do medicine and lifestyle, insulin
Yeah.
and lifestyle. If you're constantly consuming the foods that spiking your sugar and you're chasing it with insulin, you're on a roller coaster and you'll never stabilize.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of weird when you think about on one hand, we're not doing anything to educate people about what they really need to do from a lifestyle perspective so that we don't have so many people in hospitals. But at the other hand, the hospitals are complaining that they're overworked and understaffed
Right.
and they don't have enough funds and they don't have enough nurses and they don't have it's like we can fix both problems.
We can, but we don't, and don't get a meal from the hospital.
Right, it's like they're not helping themselves.
Well, if you were not on insulin when you went to the hospital, you will be on insulin when you leave the hospital because they give you, applesauce and bagels, and these are diabetic plates, by the way, and they'll
Hmm.
give you the grits and the oatmeal and the toast and the juice, and they're like, you're a diabetic, and then oh, we got to put you on insulin because your sugar is high. Well, you just made it high, so we
Right.
got to do better. And I think we just have to keep pushing for common sense, and you'll save the health industry a ton of money if you do this. But again, it's a medicine centric, procedure and surgery centric, conventional system,
Yeah.
and I think they're going to start doing better because the insurers and the health systems benefit from healthy patients. in some cases.
Mhm.
But the influence of the pharma is pretty strong. So
Right.
again, people who work for pharma are not bad people, but they make more money if you're chronically on drugs. So we have to move into a system where we teach people the right information, and I think there will be enough sick people for pharma to make their money, but we can't live in a system where we assume that they need to be on chronic medicines
Right.
to just for the sake of profit. That's crazy.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
crazy. That's
yeah,
crazy. So we met on the set of Reversed the Carnivore season in Costa Rica.
yeah.
It was fantastic. What was it like for you? I haven't asked any of the other doctors yet. What was it like for you to spend the time you did with other doctors, other people who are facing some of the same challenges you are? Some of the doctors that were there are still
Yeah.
licensed and practicing. Some of them are not licensed and practicing anymore, but still have that same experience of bucking the trend and speaking out about a lot of these things that are really kind of going against the grain.
Well, um, my journey started with, meeting Doug Reynolds and Pam Devine with Low Carb USA and Vinny Tortorich and
Mhm.
others who were very, it's like a family. And what they did is, I was like this doctor in a health system that was thinking outside the box and doing things differently. And now I have man, you got this group of people who they can understand the language you're speaking. It's like
Mhm.
I'm an avatar, and they're like, oh, they speak Avatar. That's kind of cool. So, just saw the movie, so I'm thinking about it. But
Oh, did you? Okay.
it was good, by the way. So what I found is that when you get around people who are like-minded that you respect,
Mhm.
it makes you feel like you're home. And so for me, when I had a chance to, I had met a couple of the, people who were there previously, but most I had not seen. I had not seen Dr. Kim Berry in person.
Mhm.
I've interviewed him. I had not seen I actually met Dr. Anthony Chafee at KetoCon. So I had met him there.
Were you at KetoCon last year?
I was, but I
How
was
did we not meet last
I
year? I
don't
was
know,
there.
because it's a big place, man. That's a huge conference, right? I actually, I mean, yeah, I was there, man. And I think I think I met Sean Baker and Dr. Anthony at the same time. So,
Okay.
but and then Maria Emmerich, I met her. So it was just an opportunity to say, okay, who are these people? And
Yeah.
what I found is that they were genuinely great people, really all about just helping people to heal. And they just, through whatever path, ended up being in that position where they're doing that. So I'm just thankful. In fact, if you think about it, because you're comfortable with carnivore, I'm comfortable with carnivore, that's gonna then make people feel more comfortable with carnivore. I
Mhm.
think that you just have to, and it's not that we're trying to indoctrinate or convince anybody of anything. It's just saying to the world, this should be a dietary option for people for who need it. And I just think that for so many people, it can heal them. And I know for me personally, it's made a huge difference. So man, I'm looking forward to more conferences. I
Mhm.
won't be going to KetoCon this year, but I'm definitely gonna continue to meet people and spread this message. And when you're in a busy health system, man, it's like I'm just trying to, get the work done here as well. But I
Yeah.
do want to continue to meet people in those venues. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's cool to see. Like for me, I've been doing it for almost 5 years, and when I first started, the only doctors that I knew were Dr. Baker, who wasn't practicing at the time,
Right.
and Dr. Mabry. I don't know if you know Paul Mabry at all.
Yeah.
Those are the only two. And it was like, okay, how fringe is this? You know what I
It is.
mean?
Yeah.
So
It's
now
it,
when you Google carnivore MD or carnivore doctor, you kind of get starting to see bunches of
you're
people,
starting to see
ketogenic
people.
or
Yeah.
ketogenic
Yeah.
or carnivore. You start seeing more and more and more of these doctors, and you're like, okay, there's something going on here. People
That's
are
right.
starting to wake up, and it does add to a sense of comfort, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, and what I have to do in clinic is if I recommend, I don't think, low carb is pretty much okay with some of the larger organizations now, but I still have a sense of I'll maybe, if I need to, particularly if a patient is high risk and they decide not to take a statin, I may have to throw in a study or something in the note, or a link just to say we discussed it, risk benefits, because it's still not, a lot of people are not comfortable with it yet. So you have to understand, I'm in a large health system, I'm not in private practice.
Right.
So I
Right.
have to honor that while honoring myself. I will never sell my soul. But so far, my health system has allowed me to be Tony,
That's good. That's
yeah,
good.
the
Yeah.
animal-based guy.
You
Yeah,
gotta operate within the system.
that's right. That's right.
Gotta infiltrate the system.
That's right.
Um, so when we were in Costa Rica, we had a really good conversation in one of the like group talks about
Mhm.
some of the myths about carnivore diet in general. And one of the things you brought up, which I had not heard of, which I'm so glad you brought it up, was the RCT about gut health and fiber and constipation. Could
Yeah.
you talk about that a little bit? Explain to people what that RCT was and what we can glean from that and what people can do with that in their own lives.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. I actually did a YouTube video to talk about this study, and it was pretty amazing when you think about it. How is it that a person can eat fiber? And I think it was called high fiber or low fiber and the reduction of constipation and associated symptoms, something like
Mhm.
that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in this study, they literally had like 0 people who ate the low fiber diet have constipation and its associated symptoms. 0.
They didn't have any data to put it that they did nothing, right?
It was a randomized controlled trial. And then when you look at the people that had the high fiber diet, all of them had symptoms. Almost every symptom that was mentioned, either they had most of them or a large portion of them. So now, what does this study do? This study gives us permission to say to a person who has been told their whole life that you have to eat fiber to be healthy,
Yeah.
permission to say, well, apparently that's not true. Now, if a person decides or benefits from fiber in a way that's I think a person on the standard American diet may benefit because they're on the standard American diet. But if you eat a whole foods animal-based diet, just like the lion, you don't need fiber. The
Yep.
lion doesn't need fiber, and Dr. Hampton and Coach Bronson doesn't need fiber. And so, but we need that kind of science, because when I'm talking to my colleagues, I need to be able to show them a study, because
Yeah.
everything I mean, I have a master's in nutrition. And do you think they talked about that study in that training? No.
No. Not at
No,
all.
fiber was like, you gotta have your fiber and it's gotta be balanced, and so even so that's the beauty of having done this training, is that I now can go into an educational setting and I can question my professors. Now, what's really cool is when I did one of my biggest papers in school, I compared low fat to low carb, and I was shocked, but when I got the paper back, I had a perfect score. Why? Because there's so much information to justify the dietary pattern that we encourage you to consider, because the science is there.
Yeah.
We don't have to tweak anything. We don't have to make up anything. We're honest about, was this a randomized controlled trial versus observational study, which was maybe a survey study. You have to be honest about these things, but there's a ton of data that, in fact, the Public Health Collaborative have put together a lot of those randomized controlled trials. So if anybody wants to see some science, just search randomized controlled trials Public Health Collaborative, and it'll compare those two dietary patterns, both of which will improve your health compared to the standard American diet. But clearly the low carb diet is better, and it's not even a question mark, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah. So how does somebody who's used to getting fiber, how do they start changing what they're doing? Because I have one of the things, the mindset around the need for fiber. One of the most common things that I see when I'm working with people and they're making dietary changes is their frequency changes, the consistency changes, and they start freaking out. And I've had people that are like, I don't have to poop, so I'm gonna take Metamucil.
Right,
It's
right, right,
like,
right.
well,
Well,
if you don't feel like you have to poop, why are you trying to make yourself poop? Like,
yeah, I think that's so the most important thing we do is we educate. So,
yeah.
I I think it's important that people know what to expect.
Mhm.
So, if you do a low carb diet, what could happen? Um, and once people understand what can happen, then they can mitigate that. So rather it's drinking more fluid, rather it's magnesium, sodium, potassium. Um, it's okay not to have a bowel movement every day. It's okay. What I tell people, yeah, it's shocking. I even tell,
What?
like, yeah, it's shocking. Yeah. So, but when you have a bowel movement, you shouldn't be straining. It shouldn't be little pebbles. And if you're having that, then that doesn't mean that this is not the right diet for you. Let's make sure you're drinking enough fluid. Let's make sure you're getting your electrolytes in. Let's make
Mhm.
sure that you're adding sufficient fat. So what you do is you give people what they need to know. You make sure you reassure them so they know what to expect.
Yep.
And all of this idea of, well, you got to clean yourself out. Well, if you consume something that is highly nutritious and your body loves it, if you take a steak and dissolve it in acid, it just disappears. If you take plants and dissolve it, you're going to have all this stuff left, this fiber. So your body has to get rid of that. There's nothing to get rid of when you eat a ribeye. So
Yep.
don't let that bother you, and your body will adjust. You have a beautifully made body that can handle all of this stuff as long as you eat. And for some people, they just need to ease into it. But man, when I stopped fiber, man, that bloating went away, the stomach cramping went away, the gas went away.
Mhm.
My wife's happy. All of these things have
Been there, done that, man.
man.
Absolutely.
I'm tired. I had to keep Beano in the house.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's just but that's not normal.
Yeah.
The cavemen didn't have Beano, so what are we doing? So it's
Yep.
just a ridiculous concept. So again, for those who check us out, if you're plant-based and you're thriving, have at it, right? But people need to know that carnivore is a healthy alternative, and I would argue the healthiest alternative to the way I once ate. So
Yeah, it's also the easiest, right?
oh,
When you're doing any other way, the amount of supplementation, the amount of I equate people that are more plant based with chemists. They almost have to be chemists with how they're combining their foods. You got to combine this food with that food to get this food to get that protein to get this nutrient to counteract this anti
oh,
nutrient. It's like why not just
it's
make a
too
steak?
much.
Just make a steak.
You have to have a master's in nutrition to do it.
Yeah.
And the population I serve, which, I have a lot of patients who are on Medicare. Most of them are reasonably educated, but I'm gonna tell you, man, that's too much work. I
Hmm.
don't even want to have to think that hard about what I eat. And when I was a vegetarian, I did have to think a lot about how I ate. And
Yep.
with the meat, you don't have to really do that so much. So it's really much better. I think this is a better approach
Yeah.
for most
And
people.
that's one of the cool things about the sustainability of it. It's simple, it's not complex, and you're not thinking about food all the time. So from that mindset game, right? That whole issue of relationship with food and everything else, you don't got to think about food. Just
Well, it's
I'm
3
hungry and I eat.
PM. I'm looking at my Chicago time. It's almost 3 PM. I have not eaten today yet.
Mm,
I mean, I'm not really hungry, so
right.
people who have never lived this way are thinking you're nuts. That's impossible. But no, I feel fine because you're burning your belly fat while you're recording a podcast. So it's
Right.
and then I think a little clearer. To be honest with you, my
Sure.
mental clarity's there. I feel better, so it's really a no-brainer.
Yeah. So looking at a lot of the stuff that you do, you've got this acronym called NEST,
Yes.
right? Nutrition, exercise, less stress, more sleep, how you think, less trauma, relation. And then you've got this other one, rope, which we can talk about. But I want to focus on the nest. You've got nutrition,
Yeah.
which we've been spending a lot of time on. You've got exercise. Why is exercise in one of your core components of, we call it metabolic health or quality of life?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've had people um be in a wheelchair, and I know they're going to struggle to exercise, although they can do chair exercises.
Sure.
So, for that type of patient, I do tend to focus on nutrition at first because they feel much better once they've lost a few pounds doing that, right?
Hmm. Yep.
But I will tell them if you want to maintain your weight loss, exercise is a no-brainer. If you want to be more metabolically healthy and efficient at doing all the processes that your metabolic body needs to do, then you're going to do better. So so the first thing is I kind of make sure they understand that exercise has a role. Some people can get started right away. I think everybody can. It's just about what they do. It's nice to have a trainer that can ease them
Yeah.
into it, right? Another thing I like about exercise is that I like my arteries to be elastic and flexible and bendable. And just if you just imagine, if I'm opening up and expanding my arteries, that's going to probably lead to more elasticity. So I'm going to probably have an artery that will expand when there's more volume in it. So my blood pressure is not going to go up if it's elastic. If it's stiff, it's going to go up. So that's another thing I like. Of the things that improve your HDL, which is your so-called good cholesterol, there's only two things that really do it well. One would be a low-carb, ketovore, carnivore diet.
Yep.
The other would be exercise.
What?
So there's no medicine for that. So I mean, so it's really, you're so funny. So so that's one thing I really love about it, because people are paying attention to these numbers. And by the way, another thing that improves is your triglycerides. So you can reduce the triglycerides, which you don't want to have that fat floating around in your arteries. For me, exercise is about, when we were at a reverse carnivore in Costa Rica filming, right? There was some statuesque people there. I took a picture with Dr. Anthony Chafin. I was like, dude, do you have to, be swollen like that, right? So what I'm saying is, you look better, you feel better, your energy level is insane, and honestly, you just have more confidence. So if you exercise, I remember when I had started getting into a little bit of a routine, and I was helping my kids move into WashU in St. Louis, because they both went to undergrad there, and my youngest is in grad school there. And I was helping them move, and all I walked in front of them with some boxes, and my wife was like, "What's going on with your legs? What's going on?" I was like, "What do you mean? They look more defined." I said, "Yeah." They do. So
That's just for you, baby.
that's just for you, baby. That's all it is. So I just think that for so many reasons, you don't want to just do diet. If you have to start off with diet first, that's fine. But you'll do so much better if you take. That's why I have a nest, because if you just focus on one thing, you're missing something. And you got to do those other things too. Are you getting enough sleep? Can you make sure you're not stressing about everything? So when I missed the first flight, when it was canceled coming to Costa Rica, I could have stressed about that, right?
Right.
Instead, I went home and I watched a whole lot of Netflix because I was off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't stress. I said, well, hopefully we'll get it in the next day, in which we did. We managed to get me into several scenes. So I just think you have to have a attitude that doesn't allow you to stress about little things. We got bigger fish to fry, and
Right.
missing a plane or not getting on a plane is not one of them.
Nice. Okay. All right. What is we've talked a couple times, we've talked before, you're talking about quality of life, improving optimal health, all those types of things. What does that mean? If you were to define quality of life, how would you define that?
Wow, that's a very, it's very, I'm very simple, man. If I'm able to do the things that I'm interested in doing. So if I am on a trip with my wife, and I remember taking a trip, I think we may have been I think we're in Jamaica. It was just and it's so rare that we've taken a trip together, because we've had kids most of our life. And a lot of times we do family trips with my mom and my stepdad. So what happens is, we get there and we see a beautiful African American couple, both who were, really large people. They both were in wheelchairs, and but what I loved about them is they still were taking their trip.
Yeah.
So I love that. However, when me and my wife decided we wanted to do an excursion. Like we went to the Bob Marley area. Ironically, I'm saying Jamaican. We're talking about reverse carnivore Charles Maddox, Buffalo Soldier, the whole 9
Right.
yards,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So and I just put that together. But what happens is if I decide to take a long hike, I can do it.
Yeah.
If I decide that, my wife wants to go out to some club and dance, I can do it. So for me, it's about what are the things that I want to do that add value to my life, and can I do it? So today, let me tell you about my day to day. So today I had to run to get my car, pick up my car. And then I had video visits until about noon. Then I had a meeting that I had to run because I lead a couple of clinical sites. We have our recording. After we talk, we have another meeting. Then me and my wife have some plans to go somewhere. I mean, when you start adding it all up, if you're not careful, if you're not healthy, you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Or by the time I get to my wife, I won't have anything left in the tank.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
deserves to have an energized guy who's present and who's able to give her what she needs as a wife,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So for me, it's about being able to do all the things that you are designed to do. And I think that's what I've done by, eating well, getting my sleep, keeping the stress down, and
Yeah.
of course, exercising.
That's it right there. I think that's the key. I've been kind of stuck on this concept that, and you can tell me what you think. This is the first time I'm actually saying this anywhere outside of between me and Coach Nat. I've been stuck on this concept that that life itself is nothing more than stress management.
Mm.
That everything that we do in life, every function in our body is about preparing for stress, processing or managing stress, and recovering from stress.
Mm.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And our ability to manage and handle and go through that general adaptation syndrome, essentially, it's our whole life is gas. Our whole life is going through general adaptation syndrome. One form of whether it's mental, physical, biological, neurological, whatever, it's what we're doing all the time. And what I hear you saying is that being able to do what you want to do is a part of being able to manage the stress of the day.
You better
And
know it.
still be functional at the end of the day.
Yeah, because if you allow a meeting, for example, to be stressful, for example, this same meeting that I just had was a meeting that I have to lead.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to, and I just didn't have a lot of content for that meeting.
I hate those meetings. You're like, I don't know why we're here right now.
So, but there was some other folk who had, they could add value.
Sure.
So part of what I did is I said, let me put some of this off on others to help. The other part was, okay, now that I've given them, let me turn the meeting into an opportunity for the clinicians to provide feedback. There doesn't have to be an agenda. It's just,
right.
Here are some things that we're trying to do. And I framed the discussion because sometimes there's owls when you ask for feedback, people are not talking. So in the beginning of the meeting, I talked about how important it was that the organization hears from people on the front line. And and we need to lead our leaders with that information.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing you knew, I was like literally having to cut the meeting off so I can get to this interview.
Sorry about that.
That's right. So right. So, but the point of it is, you have to learn what's the stressor. How do I learn to manage that stress? Because if you're living, you're probably going to have stress. The good news is those little stressors, assuming they're not excessive, make you stronger.
Right.
And so I think I agree with you in that so many people who struggle in life have not figured this out. They haven't learned how to mitigate risk. They haven't learned how to say no. One of my favorite books is Boundaries by Henry Cloud. It teaches you how to say no. And I say no to stuff that's not aligned with my why. If it's not aligned with my why, I just say no. And do you feel a little uncomfortable when you do that in the beginning, but you feel great after you said no?
Yes.
You just got to get it out. And
Yes.
let's do it. And then you can't do everything that's aligned with your purpose because there's only so many hours in the day. So
Right.
he is to just, where do you want to add value? Maybe if you have a partner, negotiate how you're going to spend your time. We literally, me and my wife talked about today, yesterday. So what is our day looking like?
Right.
We didn't do that in the past.
Yeah.
That created tension. She didn't know what was going on in my life. I didn't know what was going on in her life. And she's like, you're not thinking about me. Well, guess what? Every day we think about each other and we honor each other. And sometimes I have to say no when other things get in the way of us having time together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Nat and I do that too. Every
Yeah,
night we're like, okay, what's the plan for tomorrow? What are you doing? Are
that's
we
right.
going to work out together? Are we going to eat together? What are we doing? How's this going to
Yeah.
work? That kind of stuff. That's awesome. All right, let's wrap this up with one final question. You talked about the things that people can do. There's a handful of things that people can do to improve their health, improve their quality of life. What are the top 3 things that you would recommend people do to make the biggest change today?
Man, I think I'll be honest. I'm gonna have to go to sleep also because I I I have no problem with coffee, but
Me neither. Me neither.
coffee is
Love
not a
coffee.
bad thing. The only reason I wanted to deal with coffee is because I felt like it was messing with my stomach just a little bit. If I'm tired, I'm gonna drink coffee. But
Okay.
when I take but what I discovered is, oh, if I get enough sleep, I don't feel tired. Duh.
Duh.
So
Yep.
so
Right.
for me, people need to I actually write articles for the diet doctor. So if somebody searches my name and sleep or whatever, they'll find my low carb corner on the diet doctor.
Oh,
And
cool. Okay.
it'll just give you tips. So what I'll do is I'll make sure I get enough sleep by putting on my blue light blockers, at night. I may put some light in front of me, maybe the Philips, 10,000 lux light in the
Yep.
morning, and do
Yep.
other stuff, but I opt them. So I think sleep is really important, right? So that's number one. I think no, I'm gonna have to stick with nutrition, number two, because I think that that's probably had the biggest impact on my life overall. Of course, I'm into reducing carbs, and if you don't believe that that's a problem, get a continuous glucose monitor and eat some quinoa and eat
Boom.
some raisin bran and see what happens to your sugar, right?
Right. Yep.
So quinoa
Absolutely.
is supposed to be good
Yogurt.
for you. Raisin bran's a healthy cereal, whatever. Yeah,
Right.
but the numbers don't lie. So if an hour after you do that or 2 hours after you do that, your sugar spikes, that's probably not good for you. And then lastly, I think I'm gonna have to go to our thoughts, because one of the things that I used to struggle with, and I think we do every day, is
Mhm.
our thoughts, right? So those so when I made that my 14th episode of my Protecting Your Nest podcast, I talked about our thoughts. And I in that recording, I talked about how there is a bodyguard in my brain that will stand there and not allow negative thinking come in. Now it's gonna get in sometimes.
Yep.
They kind of slide between his legs or whatever. But but when that negative thought enters my brain, there's so much good stuff in there. Maybe I was listening to one of your episodes on YouTube. Maybe I was listening to some motivational speaker like Anthony Robbins or the hip hop preacher
Mhm.
Eric Thomas, right? Maybe I heard something from them. So by the time that negative thought gets in my brain, the other stuff's like, dude, you're at the wrong party, man.
Yeah.
So if we can get our thoughts right, then I think all of the goals that we're trying to achieve are going to be more doable. And that's really something I think is important. And I encourage everybody to always question those self-limiting beliefs, because with those beliefs, it will
Mhm.
sap- sabotage everything. Maybe those thoughts are getting to my throat right now. It will sabotage everything that you're trying to achieve.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Where can people find you? I know you have a book. I know you've got a podcast. You've got a YouTube channel. If anybody's in the Chicago area, how do they work with you? All that good stuff.
No doubt. I do work for Advocate Health. It used to be Advocate Aurora, used to be Advocate before that. Now we're Advocates. We're in 6 states now. So if they search my name and Advocate Health, it'll pop up and they'll be able to call to look into that. My panel's still open. I hate to say that out loud, but it hasn't. So that's number one. Number two, my kids showed me a neat little trick called Linktree. Many of us are using that now. So if they search Dr. Tony Hampton Linktree, they'll see a link to all of the resources, whether it's the book, the podcast.
Awesome. Okay.
The Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners Outreach Committee. So we're trying to reach more people. That's why going on other people's platform like yours is important, because people need to hear this message. So I'm really excited that you're doing this work, and I'm definitely going to keep doing it as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much, man. Appreciate you being on. We'll definitely have you back sometime.
No doubt, man. Appreciate you, and let's get her done.
All right.
All right. Take care.